Welcome in, sports fans. This is the Fourth and Fun podcast. I am your host, Clayton Sauer, and with me today, as always,
Clayton Shackles.
This is our second ever episode, and today we're going to be getting into a lot of topics, such as our disappointing teams for the year, how our college football playoff picks are turning out, some surprises, and our new top 25 and playoff picks. And this episode today is brought to you by the Becky Higgins Realty Team. With over 20 years of experience in the Southern Indiana housing market, they have everything you need with dedicated real estate agents such as Becky Higgins with over 14 years of experience, Alex Kingsley, and Clayton Sauer. All right, just to get straight into it, this year has been
crazy.
Absolutely nuts.
I love it.
It has been, like you said, crazy.
Yeah.
Is there a better word to it? I mean, it's been preposterous, abominable, surprising.
I wouldn't say abominable. It's been fun.
I would say abominable for my team and your team.
Yeah.
And a lot of top teams.
But I mean...
And to get into that, our disappointing teams.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll start us straight off with
there's
a team that both of us had in our original top four, the Louisville Cardinals.
You said it wrong.
I did say it wrong, because that's how everybody says it. It's
disgust
Louisville.
me.
It is Louisville. It is not Louisville. It's not Louisville.
Are they not in my disappointing? What? I meant to put them in there.
That's my number one team, obviously, because that's who I thought of first, because obviously it's my team, and I had them at number 4 in my original, college football playoff
I had
picks.
them winning the ACC.
As did I over Miami.
But that defense has looked abysmal.
The defense has been bad. I mean, we played a Miami team who's number 6 in the nation, and we scored 45 points. If I told you coming into this weekend we scored 45 points on Miami, you'd think we won.
Yeah, and your defense couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Gave up 52 points.
But
so now Louisville on the year 4-3. Losses to Notre Dame, SMU, and Miami.
The thing with that is you can't stop the passing game. Gelati has been nowhere to be found, which I guess that means teams are focusing on him, looking at the rest of your defense, be like, okay, we can.
Yeah, he's been getting double teamed a lot this year, and as you say, the passing game defensively has been pretty darn bad. Add on top of that an extension of the passing game, the QB scramble run. Riley Leonard ran for over 100 yards against us. Haynes King ran for over 50.
What did Cam Ward have?
More than he should have. I don't know the exact number. I just know he escaped the pocket several times to get first downs on third down.
When you guys play Boston, if you guys can't stop Castellanos, that might hurt you.
Yeah, that's one that scares me. And then obviously we play Clemson at Clemson against Cade Klubnik.
Oh, and they've looked great at home.
They're great at home. They have a QB that runs. I don't see us being within a touchdown.
No, because I don't remember who they were playing. I bet on it. And he took off for like a 60-yard run, nobody around him.
Oh, yeah. It's tough. But, I mean, you look at it, we're 4-3. We have 4 wins against non-ranked opponents and 3 losses against ranked opponents.
Well, you can't count the SMU loss. They weren't ranked at the time.
They're ranked now. They're 22nd.
Because they beat y'all.
But they do have... They're having a pretty good season. All right, on to my number 2 for disappointing teams, the Ole Miss Rebels. This is a team I expected to be in the playoff, and obviously 2 pretty disappointing losses. I mean, they lost to UK at home.
Great win by us.
For Kentucky. I mean, you guys scored, 17 points, 21 points?
I've slept since then.
The Ole Miss offense just looked abysmal that game. I mean, and then you blow it against LSU. You have a touchdown lead late in the fourth quarter, and you lose. It's a simple fact. You can't blow leads in the fourth quarter. All right, moving on to my number 3 is Alabama. Now, this is a disappointing team, but also can still get in just off of name value. I mean, you look at it. They lost to Vanderbilt. 0-63 against top 5 opponents in their history, and they beat Alabama.
Did you think we'd ever live in a day and age where we can say Vandy's ranked?
Vanderbilt's ranked, and Alabama lost to them. And Alabama's still ranked 10 spots higher with the exact same record.
Well, again,
how does that happen?
Kind of ties into our first episode. The committee loves Bama.
Of course they do.
They're going to try to keep them in the race as best they can. Now, do I think they're going to make it? Absolutely not.
I think they will, if they can have a good rest of the year based on their name.
Let's look at they play Missouri this weekend. Missouri has not looked great.
Missouri just missed out on a disappointing team for me. I mean, they are 6-1, but they haven't looked that great. They looked very beatable against Boston College. They lost to Texas A&M by 5 touchdowns.
It was a lot. They got LSU after this week at LSU, so they're going. Yeah.
So they got Alabama, LSU. Who else do they face this year? Oklahoma and Auburn
and Mercer. Why do they have that game this late?
I mean, there's very easily two losses in there. I mean that's a team that could miss out
you said
for
two
sure.
Losses? They're going to lose to Oklahoma?
I think they're going to lose out to Alabama and LSU.
You mean Missouri?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
All right, moving on to my number 4. This is another team that I had in my college football playoff. Utah.
I had them
4-3 this year. 4-3.
And that game against Arizona State, Cam Rising looked terrible. And now he's out for the year again.
And they got handled in that loss. They got handled in the loss to Kansas State, even worse. Kansas State's not been that great this year.
Avery Johnson can run the ball.
I mean, they look very solid, but they look like world beaters against Utah.
Kansas State, actually, I'm actually hold off on that.
And my number 5, just to give some love to my group of 5 teams, Coastal Carolina. 4-3 this year. I expected so much more.
Well,
they have a loss to Louisiana. Not great.
The Cajuns?
The Cajuns.
They're winning their conference.
Well, I mean,
it is.
You have a quarterback with the last name Booty. I'm not expecting much out of your team. They also lost to JMU.
Where are we talking about, ULM or
Louisiana, Lafayette?
Oh, General Booty plays for ULM.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Well, they're still Booty. They're still Booty.
There's a lot of Louisiana teams, and they're not too bad either.
Well, I mean, they look a lot better now that they beat Coastal. But I expected a lot out of this team. I mean, a couple years ago, they were up there in talks for the best group of 5 team out there. And the steep decline that they have had, I mean, I can expect a loss to Virginia, but not by 19 points. Virginia's not that great. I mean, they're 5-2, I believe, now.
Yeah, because they just beat them.
JMU's not that great. They're 5-2. I don't even know what Lafayette's record is, but it's not that great. All right, and just quickly moving through my honorable mentions, the Kansas Jayhawks, 2-5. I mean, come on, Kansas. Everybody wants you to win, and you come out and you go 2-5 against a not phenomenal schedule. I mean, they lost to Houston.
Oh,
Houston sucks. Houston sucks. All right, and then quickly, NC State, another top 25 team, as was Kansas. I think I forgot to mention that. Coming into the season, Kansas top 25, and NC State. NC State's record not as bad at 4-4, but certainly not that respectable. And then we move on to Oklahoma State, who a lot of people picked to win the Big 12. With losing Oklahoma and losing Texas, everybody thought, okay, Oklahoma State, the heir apparent.
You got
3-4 to open the season.
You got Ollie Gordon.
Ollie Gordon, who is a top 5 Heisman candidate in the preseason.
Yeah, and teams.
It's not just that their passing game has looked bad. Ollie Gordon has not looked that great. I mean, he's had a couple games where he's gone over 100.
I haven't looked at O-line. Is that O-line that bad?
I think it is. I mean, he's not looked phenomenal, but the O-lines look bad. All right, and that rounds out my disappointing teams. On to you, Clayton.
All right. Kind of agree with you on the number 1, Florida State. You that close, college football playoffs. I think they should have made it, but that's. And then all your players stood out, and I think that kind of just their bowl game against Georgia, and I think it kind of carried over in this season. But then again, you get DJ Uiagalelei, who's coming off a great year at Oregon State, and he's just looked like he's never played the game of football before.
He looks like a redshirt freshman. Or not even a redshirt, a regular freshman.
And he has the build of practically Cam Newton almost.
He's a solid big guy. I've just never seen somebody miss so many receivers over their heads
and
as
making
him.
terrible decision after terrible decision.
And I thought about Florida State, but the only reason I didn't include them is because we both, anticipated them to not be top 25 teams.
Yeah, but you didn't expect them to get one win.
That's true.
Against Cal.
That's exactly what I was thinking. They're 1-6. And
So,
honestly, Cal's not a bad team. Took Miami down to the wire, so that's a weird win for them to get.
It's a lot of teams have taken them down the wire, though.
Right, number 2.
Michigan.
Another AP top 10 team.
Yeah, and I think the reason I got them up there is they had the hype for Orgy going into the season. Like, oh, he's going to be our starter. He looked good, and I think their spring game. I think it was their spring game. He looked really good. And the hype train for Donovan Edwards after coming off that playoff run they had. But then they
and
come
he was
in,
featured on the cover of College Football 25.
And they come in, Orgy can't throw the ball. The other guy, can't even think of his name, can't throw the ball. All they can do is run it. Donovan Edwards has probably had 1 or 2 100-yard games.
Which is not enough.
No, and
especially for a ground-based offense. They passed for, 60 yards against USC in that win?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, another one, USC, I almost thought about putting in there.
I do have them later on.
Oh, okay. Sorry for the spoiler alert, people.
Well, so, and then you finally they fall out of the top 25, because I don't think I'd want, if they were to actually make the playoff, I don't think I'd want to watch a ground and pound team. At least, I hate JJ. I didn't like JJ McCarthy, but at least he could throw the ball when he needed to.
I mean, mathematically, they're still eligible to get in, but
I don't think they'll make
honestly,
it.
if you were going right now, I'd take IU over Michigan.
Yeah, I think IU won that game. I hate to say it. Number 3, Alabama. I mean, it's Bama. Everyone expects them to dominate.
It's Bama.
You lose to Vandy.
At Vandy.
At Vandy, after your old coach says it's not hard to win at Vandy.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Alabama has never lost a game at Vanderbilt.
No, I don't think they have.
Even as a top 5 team, they've never lost a game at Vanderbilt.
They had a win streak against them, and then, but I mean, credit to Diego Pavia. Where did he transferred from New Mexico?
New Mexico, yeah.
He only has 1 interception against Kentucky. Just want to throw that out there. But he's looked great. And
honestly, he should have been brought in to another team that was right on the cusp of being a disappointing team for me, is Auburn. If they have a quarterback,
they're good, but Peyton Thorne,
I think you flip their record.
Peyton Thorne is just god awful.
He is one of the worst starting quarterbacks who keeps getting an opportunity in the history of the Power 5, in my opinion. He's had a chance at Michigan State, which he looked decent, but he also had Keon Coleman, and he had Kenneth Walker in the backfield. If you don't look good with that supporting cast, you have to be awful. I mean, that's just a fact.
But he's just kind of shown his true colors, like he's an interception merchant.
Really? I mean,
I would call him I would call Peyton Thorne an interception merchant.
It seems like it's about every 5 passes he throws a pick.
Yeah, he's got a turnover a game at least. Based on his stats, he probably has a turnover a game. You can't be doing that as the signal caller. Osh. My number 4. Good. I think we had 2, 3, and 4 is the same. Oklahoma State, like you said, your passing game looks god awful. Ollie Gordon, who is in the Heisman race preseason, can't do anything.
Not to mention that NIL deal he's getting.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any more to be said about them. 5, you said Kansas. You got Jalen Daniels, who I think he had a good year. I don't know if he got hurt though this year or not. I thought I saw something he got hurt, but I didn't think he got out for the season. But I mean, 1 or 2 wins after coming off.
They are 2 and 5.
After coming off the biggest season of Kansas's program history, almost.
Well, I mean, other than that season in '07 where everybody sucked and they went like 12-1.
Yeah, but I mean,
Other than that was their biggest season.
I was kind of rooting for them. I was like,
Honestly,
maybe they got a shot at the Big 12 this year.
Kansas is one of those teams you can root for because they're the little guy.
Yeah, and they're not used to, like, I remember playing NCAA football 13. I'll always be like, Kansas
I mean,
sucks.
heck, they brought in Les Miles, who won national championships at LSU, and he couldn't do better than 4-8. Never took him to a bowl game.
Told you he was going to hit.
You should elaborate on what that is. He put a bet down.
I had DJ McKinney for Sam Houston to score a touchdown. I started my dynasty with Sam Houston. I know a little bit about him based on his overalls and everything.
Nerd.
So I put him down to score a touchdown and for 40 yards, and he just got the touchdown for the first score of the FIU game. First score. All right, honorable mentions. My Kentucky Wildcats. Can I rant for a second?
Take the floor. Take the floor. You know what? I'll give you the whole screen. As a matter of fact, that's for you, my friend.
We bring back Deion Walker. What's that? I can't think of the corner's name. Help me out on that.
It'll come to me later.
I can't think of our corner's name just because I'm so frustrated with it. Our entire receiving corps came back. Dane Key, Barryon Brown, Macklin. I mean, granted, our O-line is absolutely atrocious. I'll get there. I will get there. You get a transfer from Ohio State, and I think it was Travion
Henderson.
Is it? Yeah, it's Henderson. And then I think all we lost on the it wasn't JJ Weaver, but the other guy. He had a fumble. He caused a fumble.
It was JJ Weaver.
No, JJ Weaver's still there. It was number 32.
He's still there?
It was
JJ
32.
Weaver's still there?
He's on his last year. But, getting Vandergriff, I had high hopes. Back up, went to Georgia. You get recruited by Georgia, you should be good.
You would think.
If it weren't for Peyton Thorne, he's the worst freaking quarterback in the SEC. He is god-awful. At this point, I can't think of this guy's name either.
Yeah,
we went and watched him at IU. Put the Rutgers guy in.
Oh, Wimsat, yeah.
Yeah, put Wimsat in. My God.
I mean, Vandergriff has just been so disappointing.
At least Wimsat would give us dual threat. Vandergriff just looks like he doesn't know how to freaking walk in a pocket because he's stumbling over himself every time he scrambles.
I mean, he threw for, 100 yards against Georgia? Was it over 100?
I don't know. I think I'd be shocked if he passed 200 yards passing. And he had from what I know and understand, he's supposed to have a cannon.
And it would be one thing if it was just the quarterbacks that weren't great. The running game hasn't been nearly as good as in years past.
I think that also plays in with how terrible our O-line is. I mean,
that's true.
Our O-line might be one of the worst. I haven't looked at the PFF or anything like that, but we might have one of the worst O-lines in the freaking country.
And it's a shame too because as a typical Mark Stoops team, you guys have a solid, star-studded defense.
Our defense is great. That's not the problem. We can't do crap on offense, so our defense is never off the field.
I mean, you might have 4 defenders drafted this year and no offensive players.
We're going to suck next year. We're going to suck so bad.
Get
Mark Stoops out.
Yeah, what the heck happened to that big blue wall?
They got drafted.
Yeah, exactly. And then nobody came in to replace them.
They all got drafted.
I mean, what happened to that Jaeger Burton guy? He was supposed to be pretty darn good, and I haven't even seen him on the field.
I don't know. I've only felt happiness this year for the Kentucky team when we beat Ole Miss. Honestly, I'm not going to get too hyped about being Southern Miss and Ohio and all that crap.
The good news is you guys are consistently the best team in the MAC every year.
Yeah, we might as well freaking switch over to the MAC at this point because...
Go Cards, baby. Go Cards. Even though we suck, we still have a better record.
That game's going to be... Whose defense can stop a play?
It might be both... You know what would be sick? If both teams are 5-6 going into that game, and that game determines who gets into a bowl. That would be nuts.
I don't know if that's automatic bid because I went 6-6 in I played as a running back with Kentucky. We went 6-6. No bowl.
Well, that is also Kentucky's strength of schedule isn't that great. Outside of Ole Miss.
Yeah, I transferred right
and
after
Georgia
that.
and Texas.
I transferred right after that.
I was going to say, there's not a whole lot of SEC teams that you play that are that great.
No, I transferred to Iowa immediately after that season.
All right, who's your next? Now that you've gotten that off your chest.
My rant's over, yeah. We got USC, like you said.
Yep.
Big win against LSU. Nothing sense.
Just crap.
This was my honorable mention just because they're still in playoff contention. Ole Miss.
Yep, and that was one of mine as well.
I forgot to list them earlier. Your cards, like.
Yeah, what the heck? I mean, it's no wins against top 25 teams. That's Jeff Brom's bread and butter is beating top 5 teams. We can't do it.
Gelati is nowhere to be found. Might as well put up some missing signs in Louisville.
All right, moving on to the next one before we pop an aneurysm, our surprises of the year. Now, this is not necessarily just teams or players. This could be outcomes. It can be teams. It can be players. It can be plays. It could be the outcome of one game. I will start off with the biggest surprise for me, which is also kind of not that much of a surprise. The NIL situation is absolutely out of control, especially at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. First, you have the quarterback who says he was promised $500,000. Never got it.
And they were supposed to pay for his living expenses.
And
he hasn't seen a dime.
And, I mean, I feel bad for these kids because I do believe he was promised that verbally. But if it's not in contract, you can't take that for anybody's word.
Yeah, no.
And the running back also came out with similar claims, and he's off the team as well.
UNLV's still 6-1, though.
I mean, and it's in years future, I don't think this is just going to be a UNLV problem. I think this is going to be
a lot
of teams.
And I saw a thing like tying in at UNLV. It may have been a Hard Rock Casino or something. They came out and tweeted, "We will pay." They added the quarterback, and they were like, "We will pay for whatever they promised you, just to keep these playoff hopes alive."
Really?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you see some very interesting deals. Like Dave Portnoy said he'd pay up to $3 million for Michigan to get the top quarterback in the transfer portal next year. You didn't see that?
No.
Yeah, that was a couple weeks ago he said that. And then Miami pays over $1 million to get Cam Ward, which honestly is looking like one of the best moves of the offseason, getting Cam Ward. As much as I hate Miami for everything that they get from the referees, Cam Ward has been an absolute stud this season.
Yeah.
And also, I'd like to say, pretty happy I sprinkled a little bit on that plus 1,800 and him in the offseason for the Heisman.
You probably should have done it on someone else.
Well, I cashed out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm about to say. Right now I think he's 4.
All right, my number 2 is Bama's loss to Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt being a respectable team. So, if you look at the history of Vanderbilt, awful. They've had 4 top 25 finishes in their entire existence. 2 came under James Franklin, who's not there anymore, hadn't been there in almost a decade. And now you have got the guy, I think. I mean, it took him a few years, but Clark Lee, I think, is the answer at Vanderbilt. He's got this team rolling at 5-2 with a win against the number 1 team in the nation at the time, Bama. And, I mean, that's another feel-good story. You know, Vanderbilt has been historically even worse than Kansas. And Kansas has been awful.
Yeah.
All right, anyways, on to my number 3. The BYU Cougars. Sitting right now, number 12 in the nation. 7-0 overall, 4-0 in the Big 12. Wins over Oklahoma State and Arizona as well, I believe.
They're second in the conference.
Sitting second only to
Iowa
State, who I almost added in here as well, who's 7-0 and 4-0. It's just, the Big 12 this year is just, it's a completely different conference than what we thought coming in.
We lost your two powerhouses.
But even then, you thought Utah coming in as physical as
Oh,
they are
yeah.
and as good as they are,
Yeah.
they're going to run the conference, right? Wrong. 4-3, and then you got Kansas State a couple years ago. They're a college football playoff contender. Last year, very good. This year,
They could make it.
they still could
They
make
could
it,
make it. I don't think they're gonna.
but they
win
don't
that
play
conference.
BYU, or they lost to BYU. Is that no? I'm sorry.
No,
They don't play BYU, and they don't play Iowa State.
Find out who they lost to. They had to lose to one of them.
But they're 4-0 in the conference, looking real good. Iowa State 4-0 in the conference,
They
looking
lost
real
to
good.
BYU. Bad.
Oh, that's right. Kansas State's loss was to BYU.
That's how BYU got
when
ranked.
BYU wasn't
Because
ranked.
BYU
and
came in and dominated.
this BYU team is not one to take lightly. That is for
No,
certain.
although they did have a scare over
And-
the weekend.
I'll tell you this. I do have a rule for when you're playing football and making a schedule. Don't schedule teams that represent a religion.
They will.
Because they are fighting for the Lord, buddy. They're fighting
They
for
prayed
more than
before that
football.
game, and they're like, "Oh yeah,
I mean, you don't want to play Notre Dame. They got God on their side.
they got touchdown Jesus on their end zone."
I mean, BYU's got God on their side. At TCU, a couple years ago, you don't want to play that team. I mean, they got Max Duggan and they got God.
Now you got SMU building up.
Yes, exactly. It's crazy. All right, moving on to my number 4. This is a team that will infuriate my co-host, the Indiana Hoosiers, sitting 7-0, 4-0 in the conference.
It's not so much infuriating. I just wish it's kind of like ties into basketball for IU fans. Just shut up about it. My God, you hold on to the past. Now you're holding on to something that.
But
Oh
if you're
my God.
looking at it objectively, they're the best team in the area.
Yeah, great.
They're ranked higher than Notre Dame. They have a better
No,
record.
They're one behind Notre Dame.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Well, they have a better record than Notre Dame. They have a better record than Michigan. They have a better record than Kentucky. They have a better record than
Do.
Louisville. They have and obviously a better record than Purdue, who's one of the worst teams in the Power 5.
Yeah.
The only team in the area that has a better... Actually, Ohio State doesn't even have a better
They have
record.
one loss. Illinois has a loss. Northwestern's not that great. NIU's max school.
I mean, if you're looking at
Akron,
Big
Bowling
Ten
Green.
teams, Indiana currently leads the Big Ten in winning percentage.
They're
And
leading.
that's among the conference and among total victories.
They're leading the conference.
7-0 and 4-0. All right, moving on.
Yeah, please stop.
My number 5 is the Heisman chaos. Who the hell's going to win this thing? I mean, I want it to be Ashton Jaunty. He's
I think it's
ridiculous.
I think it's gonna be him, unless something happens this season or they start stuffing him. Which at this point he's bouncing off everything. Who the heck's gonna stop him? He still ran for like 180 against Oregon, who has a good defense.
This guy is insane, and he starts from the most relaxed position I've ever seen, and just dominates. It's
I do that
insanity
now.
to
I did-
watch.
When we played flag, that's the stance I did sometimes. I would just stand straight up and stare.
I mean, you look at this guy and you think, oh, he's so relaxed. He's probably going to be not that hard to take down. No. He's that snake in the grass that's coiled up and ready to strike. He makes himself small so he can hit you.
He kind of reminds me of a bigger Alvin Kamara at the beginning of his career. They're just bouncing off everything. Eating every single hit that comes his way, staying on his feet, and just breaking off for like 60 yards. Now, he doesn't have the speed of Kamara, but Jesus Christ. 180 yards against one of the Oregon, who's probably one of the better defenses in the league.
When he goes out there, it looks like he just lathered himself in baby oil. Shout out Diddy.
I was going to say it. I was going to say it. Like, Diddy.
But, I mean, you've also got Travis Hunter, one of the best two-way players we've ever seen. I mean, obviously it's something that's happened before. We've got the Charles Woodsons. We've got Miles Jack. We've got,
Deion
obviously,
do it?
many of the players from the 60s and before.
Didn't Deion do it?
Deion did it a bit, but, I mean, he's perfected it, the two-way player, because he does play every down of the game. To play 120 snaps a game and still be as effective as he is, phenomenal.
That injury is going to hurt. I don't know if he's out next week or not, but that's going to hurt.
He's expected to get a bigger role next week.
Oh, okay.
That's what they said.
All right, then.
And then obviously somebody that people forget about, guy I really like, Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
Just efficient to the core.
I think the thing with people are looking on that is like, oh, you're beating FCS teams 35-zip. Whoop-de-freaking do. I think that's what's kind of hurting him.
They beat Ohio State.
Yeah, that is true.
They beat Ohio State at Ohio State's own game. And then obviously that genius move by Dan Lanning.
Now that they're calling for that rule change.
Yep. I mean, that's a hallmark of being a great competitor is that you're so smart you can outthink the rules so much they have to make another rule for you. It's genius. And then obviously Cam Ward at Miami, who we've spoken about.
I just thought about that Kentucky corner's name and now I know it. It's Hairston.
Oh, Devin Harrison.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, now moving on to my honorable mentions. Texas A&M. This is a team that, along with Miami, I thought coming into the year would do Texas A&M and Miami things, and they have not. Outside of that one blemish against Notre Dame, they've been very solid. They beat a Missouri team that's top 20 by 4 or 5 touchdowns and looked
blew them
dominant. It wasn't even at the end that they just
it was away,
the score up. I think it was.
Not a Cobb Field.
And then Auburn. I mean, I expected this team to not be great, but 2-5 with an offense that averages 18 points a game against Power 5 teams.
Dude, that's not what you expected.
It's awful. It's so bad. Now, to flip the coin on offense, I just got to give my boys at Iowa.
Oh my God.
A hands up to them.
I told you the overs are going to hit now.
The Iowa offense, after being the most inept offense in the history of college football the past 2 years, comes out this year averaging 27.9 a game. I got to give my boy Kirk Ferentz, the most underrated coach in the history of college football, outside of Tom Osborne in Nebraska. Look his record up, you'd be amazed. Has done an amazing job with this team. And I'm just very impressed.
They've still got a good defense.
And they've still got a good defense, but obviously the team record not as good as we thought, 4-3, even with this improved offense. But that's a surprise for me. All right.
I'm not even going to speak on this number one long. Indiana, yeah, congrats. You're 7-0. Please shut up about it. I'm praying.
Just so you know, we live in southern Indiana, so
I'm praying Washington beats them next week. I'm praying. Just bring them back down to earth so they can shut up.
Do you want some? That's some haterade.
Yeah, I will gladly
some
take some. I will drink it every day. It's their fans. They don't shut up. As a Kentucky fan, you haven't won a championship since the 70s, maybe the early 80s. And the only thing you can
conference?
No, national.
IU?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean in basketball?
Yeah. And then the only thing you can bring up to Kentucky fans is the watch shot. Who won the freaking Natty later that year? We did. So who got the last laugh? Shut up.
But IU beat you guys the next year.
That's fine.
Even after you guys refused to schedule them again.
Well, Pope is scheduling them.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I think he's bringing it back. I think that's what I heard.
I love that. So Louisville and IU play this year in basketball, as does Louisville and Kentucky. And then in the year's future, UK, IU.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing for the sport.
I think Pope's bringing it back.
But anyways, we're not talking about basketball.
All right, number 2, SMU.
Southern Methodist.
They had a really bad, I don't know if it was a bad loss. They had a loss earlier in the season. They were in that 2-quarterback system.
Well, do you remember who their loss was to? You want me to blow your mind? They seemed terrible in the preseason, but they're great now.
I thought it was Houston.
It's the BYU Cougars.
Was it really? Okay, so it wasn't as bad. So that loss looks a lot better now. They lost to BYU early in the season. They run that stupid 2-quarterback system with Preston
Stone.
Preston Stone and the guy that the dual threat they have in now.
Who honestly is a much better quarterback.
Yeah, and now they got him starting, and he looked great against Louisville.
He really did.
They got that great win. They've looked great before that, and now they're in the top 25, and they're kind of sneaking up the ACC polls.
I mean, honestly, I was told this by somebody in the preseason, and I thought, Yeah, I could see it, but I doubt that. They were like, SMU is a dark horse to win the ACC championship. And I was looking at the
They're in
betting
it.
odds, they absolutely were.
They are in it.
But they're undefeated in the conference. They beat Louisville, who, obviously, as much as we're disappointed in them, they're still a top 5 team in the ACC.
Yeah, I think they only got 3 teams ahead of them. Obviously, Miami, Clemson. I think Pitt's above them. I'm not sure.
No, Pitts. Oh, in the AP poll, yes.
I'm talking about ACC ranking. I haven't looked at the standings for that, but I know they're up there. We've already spoke. Number 4. No, I'm on 3.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, coming off that 3-win season last year, you turn it completely around. They're undefeated.
They are undefeated.
Undefeated. Ranked in the top 20.
Is this the year of the underappreciated 7-0 teams?
You figure...
Does it not feel like that?
It kind of does, because it's going to get into my next one after my number 4. I'm not going to speak on a lot because you spoke on them. But it's looking like it, because you got SMU up there. You got Pittsburgh up there. Indiana's up there. BYU's up there.
Iowa
State is in the top 10.
Miami is ranked below several teams that have a loss.
Yeah. And they are sneaking out wins. I think that's why they haven't moved in a few weeks.
That's true, but they're undefeated.
True.
I would rather take a win by 1 than a loss by 1 every single day.
So I think you start, and you look, and Vanderbilt's ranked, and then you're looking at the votes below that. And there's Washington, who lost a lot in the offseason. They're getting votes. I can't think of who else was getting votes, but there's quite a few teams that they're performing well. Liberty's not even ranked, and they're undefeated. There's quite a few teams that are you don't, no one talks about them, no one thinks about them, performing great. Just not. There's some of them are just not getting the representation
they're not getting the love.
No. Number 4, BYU. You already spoke on them. The Mormons are here. They're this close.
They're close. Okay, I heard you say they're here, and I was like, no, they're Mormon.
They're here, as in they're dominating the Big 12. They're this close.
Yeah.
To get, they're really this close to getting in the college football playoffs. And like you said, no one saw that coming with the way the Big 12 is shaping up based on Oklahoma State. Heck, Iowa State's a shock. It was really Oklahoma State, Kansas State. That's who everyone thought was okay, this is who's going to compete for the Big 12.
People talk about the chaos in the SEC. Is the Big 12 not have even more chaos?
I think that's the most chaotic conference right now.
I would say. The teams you thought going into the season that were 1, 2, and 3 are not. No. Not even close.
SEC's around where people thought it would be. ACC is, without exclusion of Louisville, no one really saw SMU being 2 or 3 in that. And then Big Ten. Yeah, I'd say Big Ten's. I didn't have Penn State as high at the end of the season, but they're Big Ten's where it probably should be.
Yeah, I would say.
My number 5, you didn't show love to them. I'm going to show love to them. The military academies. Army and Navy, undefeated. I think only allowing 20 points a game. Army's throwing the freaking ball. They're dominating everyone they play.
Well, we say they're throwing the ball. They had one good game.
No, there was a couple. That quarterback threw for 200 yards.
They're averaging right now 100 yards passing a game.
That's more than what they normally do.
It is way higher.
They're throwing the ball.
But they are throwing the ball, which is a surprise.
And I'm excited to see them, even if they both go in this week and later in the year and beat Notre Dame. Well, now you're in the talks is one of them getting in the college football playoffs? Because then you got to, they're going to play against each other in their Army-Navy game. And then they might just have to turn around and play each other again in the conference championship. And you're going to be like, oh, God, who's gonna take this?
Actually, funnily enough, the conference championship is played before the Army-Navy game. So they could play each other for a conference championship before they play each other in the regular season. Is that not just weird?
So, but that means whoever wins the conference championship automatically gets in. If they are higher ranked than Boise.
If the conference is ranked higher, it's based off of the conference ranking, not the conference members ranking.
So Boise State could win and say, I don't think Mountain West is that weak, but say the Mountain West is weak.
They would not get in. It's based off of the conference rankings, which is something not a lot of people talk about and a lot of people are confused about.
Because I would say I thought it was the highest ranked Group of 5 champion.
That's what I thought also, but no. It's the highest ranked conference Group of 5 champion.
Alrighty then. All right, I kind of put in my own honorable mention. These are really just stories. The Heisman race, you spoke about it. We all know how it is. It's crazy. You don't expect Janky to be up there, Group of 5, running back, just bouncing off everyone. Number 1, two-way player, Travis Hunter. Number 2, I don't know who 3 is. You got Cam Moore. Dylan Gabriel, Cam Moore. Like, you got those 4 competing. And we may not even have a quarterback Heisman this year.
Honestly, it's looking more and more like it won't be.
Good. Kind of happy for that.
Could be the first running back Heisman since Mark Ingram? Or no, Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Since Derrick Henry.
No. Oh, running back, yes.
Yes.
Devontae Smith was the last non-quarterback to win it. This kind of ties into what we were talking about the Big 12. Surprise conference leaders. How you leading the Big 10?
Yep.
You got Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State up there with the Big 12. You were expecting Oklahoma State to be leading that.
Big 10 could or could not be a shock. A lot of people picked Ohio State, but Oregon, that's not a huge shock.
SEC.
I will say Penn State's been a little bit shocking for a lot of people. Not for us on this podcast, though. We picked them preseason to get into that college football. Oh, I picked them preseason. That's why you listen to this guy, not this guy.
Yeah, that's
but
why
anyways,
I lose money every week. But SEC is where it should be.
Yep.
I think Big Ten's about where everyone outside Indiana's about where it should be. Yep. ACC, outside, like I said, outside of Louisville, that's where it should be as well.
Yep.
Now this one, you mentioned the NIL stuff. Removal of the NLI.
Really, I hadn't heard about this.
Yeah, so I looked it up so I could read on it. So they're removing the National Letter of Intent program for high school players. So instead of signing, I'm committed to here, the prospect is signing with the university through a fully transition of financial aid. It's like going to financial aid agreements. So it seems like NIL.
So instead of just getting a scholarship, now they can apply for scholarships.
It's either that or it's going to slowly switch. Okay, so it says it's being eliminated because of the transfer portal, and they're like trying to rethink their approach to like the because they're young kids, so the amateurism of sports.
Well, let's be honest though, they're not amateurs.
No, they just aren't. They're all about that money.
They're employees of the school, essentially.
But now this will allow schools to share their revenue with players. So it's kind of, in my mind, it's looking like NIL is now taking over the NLI.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think there needs to be restrictions on that NIL crap. There has to,
there's got to be some sort of...
You got to find a way to, calm it down a little bit.
The NCAA is completely taking their hands off, and they're like, hey, Congress, please fix this so we don't have to, because we don't want to get sued even more.
Yeah, but there's got to be...
What the heck is the point of the NCAA if they're not on top of this thing that completely controls all of college sports now?
Yeah.
It's not just football, it's basketball, it's volleyball, it's gymnastics. The biggest contracts for anyone in NIL are, believe it or not, gymnastics. Livy Dunn last year made more than any other player in any other sport for NIL.
She's already making millions because her boyfriend's in the MLB.
Well, I mean, not just her boyfriend. Obviously, Paul Skeens is awesome. Great pitcher, making a lot of money. But she, through her endorsements and her time at LSU, made a lot of money.
Yeah, they need to find some way to take control of this NIL stuff.
All right, we're starting to run a little bit long, so we're going to get into our new college football playoff picks, and we're going to run through it fairly quickly so we don't run over this 50-minute mark. We're already at 44. All right. So my number 1, Oregon. I have them beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. My number 2, I have Texas beating Georgia in the SEC championship. I have that as a reversal of what we saw last weekend with Georgia getting a 30-15 win over Texas. And then my number 3, I have Miami over Clemson. This is a team in the early season. I had them in, but not in the top 4. And then BYU at number 4. I have them, obviously there because they have wins over Kansas State and SMU already. And then I have them beating Iowa State in the conference championship. I think they go undefeated. But I still think they get no respect and finish number 4.
Yeah.
I have my number 5 as Georgia. Obviously, I had them losing to Texas. My number 6, Ohio State. I had them losing to Oregon. And then my number 7, I have Penn State. I had Penn State losing to Ohio State in the regular season and not getting into that championship game, obviously because they have that tiebreaker loss to Ohio State. My number 8, I have Clemson, who lost to Miami, obviously. My number 9, I have Iowa State with their only one loss being to BYU in that conference championship. Number 10, Tennessee. I think they'll probably finish 9-3, 10-2, not make the conference championship, still have the resume and the name to get in. And then my number 11, I have Indiana with that loss in the regular season to Ohio State. But with the strength of schedule they have, they will only have one loss, and that's to Ohio State. Their only other good team that they play is Michigan. I'm saying their strength of schedule is that low. The remaining schedule they have is that low. Ohio State's their only loss.
They've played bottom feeders of the Big Ten.
And they will continue to. All right, and my number 12. This is where I had to really think, but in the end, I went with Boise State. I think to finish the season, they have a much easier road than Navy and Army do, and that's because Navy and Army play each other most likely 2 more times. And Navy and Army both play Notre Dame. So in the regular season, I have Navy over Army. I'm sorry, in that conference championship, I have Navy over Army. And then the preceding game, I have Army beating Navy. So obviously they both have one loss to each other. Possibly 2 to Notre Dame, but I think Notre Dame's just going to lose one of those to one of them because, Marcus Freeman. And
right.
Obviously Boise State, I have them getting in. I think Ashton Genty is going to be a big shock. But, obviously that 12-5 matchup, I have them against Georgia, so probably going to be a short midnight for Cinderella.
All right. My college football playoff teams. I got Ohio State beating Oregon because it's hard to beat a team twice. So I got them beating Oregon in the championship. I got number 2, this might shock you, Iowa State.
Really? Number 2? You think they're going to get that much respect?
I looked at their schedule. They play another ranked game, and I think that might, if it's a top 25 team, if they're still top 25 by then, might push them over Texas.
Maybe. So, number 3, you have
Texas.
Texas, okay.
I have Texas over Georgia. I had Iowa State, by the way, beating BYU.
In that conference championship. Yeah. So we went the opposite there, but we both had the same matchup.
And we went opposite here. I got Clemson beating Miami.
See, that's what I really thought about. My gut was telling me Clemson's going to beat Miami, but I can't ever trust my gut. So I was like, okay, I'll go the opposite, Miami.
Yeah, I think Clemson's finally came into their element. So with that, 5, the Big Ten loser, Oregon. 6, the SEC loser, Georgia. And then I kind of put, I'll get into that. 7's Penn State. I think they will get a loss to Ohio State, and that'll drop them. 8 is Miami, just because where they're ranked. I think that loss to Clemson will hurt them a little bit. 9's Tennessee. 10, I think LSU finds some way to get in. They got a little tough of a end of their schedule, but I think they'll find their way. 11, I think I looking back on, I think I put them a little low, but BYU. I think where they should be is probably where Penn State's at, and just boot the list down from there.
Could be.
And then 12, we agreed on this group of 5 team. I got Boise State. No Indiana. Get over it, Hoosiers. No playoffs for you this year.
Obviously, that's where we disagree on that, but guess that's where we'll have to leave it there.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
again, this has been the Fourth and Fun podcast. And as again, we are brought to you by the Becky Higgins Realty Team. Please give them a call sometime or look them up whenever you're in Southern Indiana. They are associated with Remax Advantage, which is a local brokerage in the Floyd Knobs area. And I am your host, Clayton Sauer. With me today was my guest, Clayton Shekels. Thank you and have a great day. Like and subscribe.